and Romeo and Juliet. So I didn't feel like I was violating anything, because I don't really necessarily love remakes, because I wasn't fitting in very well to the world that I was, that I was living in at the time.
Why would a director turn his back on the very stars who helped make his films legendary? The answer isn't random at all. It's a pattern. 6 actors stepped into Spielberg's orbit and then, just as quickly, vanished forever. The reasons? Public betrayal, too much control on set, or simply showing up in the wrong headspace. And the consequences were brutal, being erased completely from future roles. In a moment, you'll see not just who these stars were, but exactly how their missteps ended their place in Spielberg's universe, once and for all.
Both the 61 film and the Broadway musical both owe a huge debt of gratitude to William Shakespeare.
Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1, Megan Fox. Imagine being one of Hollywood's hottest stars and then being wiped off the map in the blink of an eye. That was Megan Fox's reality. Practically overnight, she went from being the face of a billion-dollar franchise to being completely cut out, as though her character had never existed at all. Her meteoric rise started with Transformers. Audiences connected with her sharp, confident screen presence, and her role as Michaela instantly made her a household name. Studio executives saw her as the breakout star who could carry new projects far beyond robot blockbusters. For a young actress just getting started, it looked like the perfect launch. Then came her infamous comments about director Michael Bay. In interviews, she spoke publicly about her frustrations with him, going so far as to compare his style to notorious authoritarian figures from history. The media latched onto the remarks immediately, framing it as a bold stance that crossed a line. Behind the scenes, it wasn't Bay who acted. It was reportedly Spielberg, the film's executive producer, who told Bay to let her go. That decision wasn't about performance. Fox hadn't delivered a flop, and she hadn't faded from public interest. She was erased because she had spoken too loudly and against the wrong person. By the time Transformers: Dark of the Moon hit screens, her character wasn't simply recast. She was deleted, left unmentioned like she'd never existed at all. For Spielberg, it proved one thing: questioning the leadership in public guaranteed you wouldn't be given a second chance. Number 2, Shia LaBeouf. He was supposed to be the heir to Indiana Jones, but one press junket changed everything. Shia LaBeouf had gone from Disney Channel comedies to leading big-budget hits almost overnight, and Spielberg seemed to take him under his wing. With projects like Disturbia and Eagle Eye backed by Spielberg as a producer, LaBeouf quickly rose into the director's inner circle. By the time Indiana Jones and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull hit theaters, Spielberg had positioned him not just as a co-star, but as the possible future of the entire franchise. But instead of riding that momentum, LaBeouf did something Spielberg considered unthinkable. After the film's release, he openly criticized it during interviews. He didn't just admit disappointment, he publicly blamed Spielberg for making the movie too cautious, too predictable, too safe. For audiences, it sounded like a candid confession. For Spielberg, it looked like betrayal. This wasn't a case of venting privately or expressing frustrations in the safety of closed doors. LaBeouf aired his doubts on a global stage, putting the film's creative choices on Spielberg himself. And that was a line the director had drawn clear many times before. He would tolerate mistakes, but he refused to tolerate disloyalty. Almost instantly, the mentor-protege bond dissolved. LaBeouf's name was never attached to another Spielberg project, and the idea of his character carrying the Indiana Jones torch vanished without a trace. Spielberg never gambled again on the actor who turned his back so publicly.
Portrait of a lonely human being who doesn't know anything about himself, who has very little identity. His identity comes from what people say about him, what people write about him, and the people who take his picture, but he doesn't have any familiarity with what within him.
Number 3, Christian Bale. Before he was Batman, Christian Bale was a teenage prodigy thrown into Spielberg's Empire of the Sun. For most young actors, just memorizing their own script would be enough. But Bale went further, learning not only his own lines, but also those of the entire cast, determined to understand every beat of the film. That kind of preparation made him stand out, even in an enormous production filled with experienced performers. The challenge came when his drive bled into the way scenes were actually filmed. Bale sometimes asked for retakes, sensing he could push his performance further. At times, he even suggested alternative ways to approach moments. Stepping into territory Spielberg usually controlled directly. For Spielberg, who ran his sets with absolute authority, those suggestions created a subtle but real clash. It wasn't open conflict. There were no shouting matches, no headlines about creative wars. But Spielberg valued rhythm on his productions, tight direction, minimal disruption. Young Bale's intensity, as impressive as it was, risked throwing that balance off. What for him felt like artistic commitment may have looked, from Spielberg's chair, like a challenge to his leadership. The irony is that Bale's performance became one of the most praised by critics that year. Yet, despite that success, Spielberg never called him back for another role. Bale's relentless determination launched him into a groundbreaking career. But in Spielberg's world, that same passion quietly closed a door that never reopened. And while Bale lost a future collaborator, Spielberg's next clash wasn't with a teenage actor, but with a screen legend old enough to play a father figure both on and off the set. Number 4, Sean Connery. The dynamic between Indiana Jones and his father was iconic, but behind the scenes, it wasn't a perfect family bonding moment. Sean Connery's role in The Last Crusade was celebrated by audiences around the world, giving the series a fresh spark and helping cement the trilogy as one of Hollywood's most beloved adventures. On screen, his playful banter with Harrison Ford worked flawlessly. Off-screen, though, Connery's instincts for control made things more complicated. Even with Spielberg at the helm, Connery often asserted himself during shooting. He wasn't shy about revising dialogue, suggesting that his lines better reflect his own sense of humor and timing. He gave opinions on how his wardrobe should look, and even pushed to make his character more central to the movie than Spielberg had originally planned. For a director building a careful balance between father and son, Connery's adjustments made that vision harder to maintain. Spielberg had aimed for Henry Jones Sr. to exist as a foil, guiding, challenging, but never overshadowing Indiana. Connery's growing influence blurred that balance, pulling the story more toward the father than Spielberg intended. While the results thrilled fans, that behind-the-scenes tension left its mark. Despite the massive success and the warm reception to Connery's performance, Spielberg never brought him back in later installments. The reason wasn't about talent, it was about boundaries. For Spielberg, creative authority had to remain clear. And if even a beloved legend made that line difficult, he chose to move forward without them. It showed that even the brightest stars in their prime weren't safe once Spielberg sensed disruption. Number 5, Julia Roberts. On paper, it looked like magic. America's sweetheart cast as Tinkerbell in Spielberg's Hook. Julia Roberts had just come off a string of hits, and her name carried weight at the box office. To audiences, it seemed like the perfect pairing. The biggest young actress of the moment playing one of the most beloved characters of all time. But on set, the fairy tale charm quickly gave way to something else entirely. Roberts arrived in the middle of personal upheaval, with her private life splashed across tabloids almost daily. That stress spilled over into the production. Crew members quietly began sharing stories about her frequent lateness, difficult moods, and unwillingness to take direction, calling her Tinker Hell behind her back. For a film already under pressure with its sprawling cast and massive budget, the disruption didn't go unnoticed. Over time, the tension became unavoidable. Roberts finished the film, but the partnership never recovered. Spielberg later admitted openly that he wouldn't work with her again. She continued to soar in Hollywood with Oscar-winning roles, yet within Spielberg's circle, one rocky collaboration had been enough to close the door for good. It showed that even those adored by the public could find themselves uncastable in Spielberg's world. Number 6. Richard Dreyfuss. Spielberg and Dreyfuss made movie history together, but their partnership ended with no farewell, just silence. In the 1970s, Dreyfuss became Spielberg's trusted lead actor, carrying Jaws as the ambitious young oceanographer and then anchoring Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Their collaborations defined a new era of blockbuster filmmaking, cementing both men as powerful names in Hollywood. At the time, it seemed impossible to imagine Spielberg's rise without Dreyfuss by his side. But the working relationship slowly shifted. Dreyfuss had a reputation for questioning direction on set, offering his own take on how scenes should unfold. What might have been harmless debate early in Spielberg's career grew harder to handle as Spielberg's control of his productions became absolute. Reports suggest that Dreyfuss often rubbed cast and crew the wrong way, clashing over creative calls and cutting into the smooth authority Spielberg wanted while running massive projects. Spielberg's decisions weren't random. They followed a clear pattern. He valued loyalty, discipline, and alignment with his vision above raw talent. One misstep, whether public criticism or disruption on set, could be enough to shut someone out permanently. The actors he cut didn't lose because of failing skills. They lost access because of broken trust. So, what do you think? Were Spielberg's choices ruthless, or were they necessary to protect the kind of films that defined his legacy? Let us know in the comments. In Spielberg's world, talent may earn attention, but only trust determines who stays in the picture.